there ain't no stopping us. Fly without a boarding pass. Couldn't catch me, I'll be moving fast. Call me a shooting star. Let 'em know who you are. Flying up in a bar. Wish on a star. Time to show 'em who's in charge. Call me a shooting star.
Didn't even get to cross.
I said I'm moving too far. Get to glass. Looking at a shooting star. Got more than a couple of people going mad. I swear they're rooting hard. Tell them I be big in the game like she went and got them breast implants. I said I'm moving too fast. Didn't even get a glance. I'm ready to eat up track like I'm seated in a restaurant. If you had swag like mine, you know it's best to flaunt. We aren't hating because you aren't. Shining like it's neon. Rock like kings of Leon. Shooting stars across the galaxy. I stand out, so don't be mad at me. Infiltrate, I'm with my strategy. When I turn up, then I just have to leave. Shooting stars across the galaxy. I stand out, so don't be mad at me. Infiltrate, I'm with my strategy. When I turn up, then I just have to leave. Yeah, shooting. Yeah, shooting. Yeah, shooting. Yeah, shooting shots. Shooting stars.
Didn't even get to cross.
I said I'm moving too far. Get to glass.
What about, okay, I'm going to use my internal mic, which sucks, but it's the only one I can get to work. Sorry about that. Perhaps when a clip is playing, I will try to get the better mic. So you guys let me know if you can hear now. Okay, yeah, I'm really sorry about that. I'm going to have to figure out why my good mic is not working. Thank you. And I was saying I look like an Oompa Loompa. It's kind of orange, but I figured out why. It's the setting I have on this light. And I don't really like it. I'm always fucking with my light. That's better, isn't it? I'm not quite so orange. Yes. Okay, I've got a bunch of stuff for you today. And if there's anything that you guys want to talk about, I'm more than willing to be diverted. But if not, I've got all kinds of clips the way I do, which keeps me occupied while I do my Get Ready With Me. For those of you who have not experienced this before, I do like, women know the Get Ready With Me. It's like you put on your makeup and you talk, basically. So I'm going to play some clips, get ready for some other recording I need to do, and we'll have a conversation. But I am like really so bummed that my good mic's not working. So I'm using the internal mic, and I know it sucks. But maybe while some clips are going on, I will figure out my good mic, okay? So the first clip I have up for you guys is, one second. I need to pull my hair back so I can put my makeup on. Jordan Peterson. Now, I've wanted to cover quite a bit of Jordan Peterson for a while because it's like a really weird relationship that the Liberty community has. And I do think it's kind of part of the whole, and now I am calling it an infestation of wokeism that I just utterly reject. Just not having it anymore. Done. So that it seems like because he's, I'm frozen on Facebook. I can't help that. That's Facebook. Because he had that confrontation over the pronouns, that it seems like certain woke portions of the libertarian community, seem to think they have to oppose him or they have to dislike him. Now, don't get me wrong. I have some friends who have some legitimate criticisms and they dislike him in good faith. But I think a lot of people dislike him in very bad faith. I don't agree with everything he says. I don't agree with everything I say, but I agree with most of what he says. And I think he conducts himself very fairly and admirably when dealing with opposing views. He isn't like the Ben Shapiro out looking for college students to get a quick gotcha. He actually engages with people on an intellectual and respectful level. So here is where I'm going to disagree with him a little bit. So let's go through that clip if we can. Let me see if I have my little buttons here right. Here we go.
I just want to first thank your comments on things like political correctness and the obsession of certain elements of the left on campuses to screen out discourse, because I genuinely think that is an issue and problem in status quo. But following on from that, I just want to pick your thoughts on what you say about freedom of speech and discussions in general, right? Because you basically flagged that, I think, in your answers just then, that freedom of speech has an instrumental purpose. It's there to help us find truth, correct me if I'm wrong, to identify the correctness or the logos against the possible consequence of blood and death. So here's the question, right? If I, as an individual, am affected by discourse in a way that doesn't cause physical violence, so that's not bound by hate speech laws and whatnot, but makes me feel so deeply uncomfortable that I don't belong to society or this community, or when I say something, whenever I try to say something, I'm ridiculed because of my race, the way I talk, or my gender, or the way I behave, then surely that means that my valuable insight to contribute towards logos, towards the pursuit of truth, is shut out by other people's more vociferous speech and more dominant speech. And this is what we see in cases of campuses, whether it be from the right or the left, of people using very violent and loud language to drown out dissent, to drown out those who oppose them on campuses, in society and whatnot. From Donald Trump to people in Swarthmore, we've seen this happen. So wouldn't you say that the attempt to clawback or the right of freedom of speech isn't so far absolute as instrumental. And based on that, therefore, there are some cases where freedom of speech of some individuals can be curtailed if we want to get the better appreciation of the Logos and a better inclusion of more voices that are currently being shut out as a result of the extremity and radicalism of those select few. Wouldn't you say that's the case? Thank you.
Okay, I want to stop there before we hear Dr. Peterson's, he is a doctorate, right? I think he is. Well, I'm going to say that until somebody corrects me. Response. I would love to see what your responses to that would be. I would think that is probably one, it's a strong statement of one of the best arguments against unlimited free speech. And I like dealing with the best arguments, not the silly arguments. But while I have your attention here, let me see if I fixed my better mic. You guys have to let me know. Is this one working now? It seems to be. Please let me know. I'm seeing that I am getting levels. And this mic should sound a little better. So let me know. And yes, it definitely was a mouthful, but let's see if we can put it more simply. He's basically espousing a utilitarian view of free speech, that the goal is that everyone's thoughts will get out there so that everyone's wisdom, the collective society's wisdom, can be increased. I think that's a fair statement of what he said. So he's saying if there are some people who are rightly or wrongly, or maybe the way is justifiably or unjustifiably, feel intimidated so that they don't feel like they can speak, shouldn't there be some curtailment of speech so that everybody, including those people, can speak? I think that is what he was arguing. Now, Jordan's going to give his response, but I think I fairly characterized it. You guys let me know. And I'm agreeing with a lot of the comments. How someone else feels is their own responsibility. But society today doesn't seem to agree with that, do they? But let's see what Jordan has to say, because I somewhat disagree with him. A lot of people say that they suspect Jordan Peterson is a closet libertarian or hasn't yet discovered. I don't think necessarily he is. I think he has a lot of libertarian tendencies, but I think in his answer, though I might be misunderstanding it, and my husband just came in. Wayne, close the door. But yeah, anyway, that inside joke for some of you guys. But I think that I got lost now. He totally distracted me. Thanks, Wayne.
That's what I do.
It is what he does. So I might be misunderstanding him. I will grant that. But I think there's a fundamental difference he is going to express that's incompatible with libertarianism. But I could be overstating my case. Let me know. Let's continue and hear his response.
Well, there's a very simple answer to that, which is yes. But I'll elaborate. I mean, the first thing is, I'm not an admirer of hate speech laws. But that doesn't mean that I'm naive enough to think that there's no such thing as hate speech. So obviously, if you've ever been involved in an extremely serious argument, you know perfectly well that there's such a thing as hate speech, because you've probably uttered some. So, and there's also no doubt that there are forms of speech that are utterly reprehensible, and some of those are actually already punished by law. You can't incite to violence, you can't libel someone, right? So we have some restrictions already on what's acceptable discourse. Whether it's the case, typically speaking, that some people have more privileged access to free speech than others, well, that's obviously the case. I mean, that's part of power. And power is one of the means by which people climb hierarchies, although the more you can climb a hierarchy by exercising power, the more that's an indication of the fact that that hierarchy has become corrupt. So there's no doubt that these structural impediments to the free exchange of discourse exist. There's also no doubt, as you already laid out, that that's not in everyone's best interest, because what you want, if you have any sense in your society, and this is also why I think that we've put proper emphasis on the sovereignty of the individual, is that you want everyone's logos to have the opportunity to clarify the unknown and reconstitute the world. And if you shut that down, then you risk getting access to the unique insights that that individual might bring. Okay, so I agree with your diagnosis completely. And I think that, you know, even...
Okay, I want to stop there because there's a lot of words there too, isn't there? And I don't want to lose track. Already, I can see a lot of fundamental disagreements, at least with deontological libertarianism. His approach is strictly utilitarian. And I don't think there's any brakes on that thing, on utilitarianism. So he basically says that there's a reason speech is good because it adds to the collective wisdom. I'm going to get to Karen on another Karen. Hello, fellow Karen. I'm going to hopefully explain that, and you guys let me know if I'm unclear as to what I think's unlibertarian about that. Okay, let me step back a little bit here. I'm using the word libertarian in two different ways. Libertarianism as a political philosophy can be held by people who are not libertarian in their worldview philosophy. In other words, a utilitarian is a worldview philosophy. That's not libertarianism, that's utilitarianism. But a utilitarian can be a political libertarian because they believe it is of the highest utility to grant the same types of freedom that libertarians want to grant. They just believe that it is expedient. And there's nothing wrong with that. There are plenty of political libertarian utilitarians. So in that respect, if Jordan Peterson is a utilitarian, he absolutely could be a political libertarian. But what I am talking about here is not political libertarianism. I'm talking about sheer philosophical libertarianism. And sheer philosophical libertarianism is not utilitarianism. And his argument for free speech was based upon a utilitarian argument. And that fundamentally is not philosophically libertarian. Because a libertarian would believe in free speech whether or not it had utility to society, whether or not it added to the collective wisdom. They believe in free speech because nobody has a right to control your mouth because you own yourself. Now, hopefully I explained there the issue. Now, could he be a political libertarian with that view? Absolutely. What he's going to go on to state about laws is very politically libertarian. But it's philosophical justification, its philosophical grounding is utilitarian. So that is what I mean. So hopefully that somewhat explained it, because right now he just gave a utilitarian argument for free speech. Now, I happen to believe that 99% of the time, there isn't a conflict between what gives the most good to the most people, which is the classic framing of utilitarianism. It gets into the weeds, but let's stay with simple, and honoring natural rights. Because I think it would be a very strange world if honoring rights led to misery for most people. So, I don't necessarily see a real world conflict between utilitarianism and libertarianism, but there is a philosophical conflict. So what he is saying perfectly comports with the same outcome, but his reasoning is different. His grounding, the grounding principle is different. He's not grounding it in self-ownership. He's grounding it in the good of society, or in the best interest of everybody. So let's continue.
Even in the West, to ignore the fact that many of our hierarchies tilt towards tyranny and that prejudice still exists in multiple forms is a mistake, although it's only one factor among many and shouldn't be identified as the primary causal determinant of each individual's life. I think that's a dreadful error. The question is, what do you do about it? And the devil's in the details. And as I said already, I'm not an admirer, for example, of hate speech laws, even though there's plenty of hateful speech, because I think the best thing to do is to leave free speech alone as much as you possibly can, not because that will result.
Okay, I want to stop there just for 1 second. And
seems
before
highly probable to
sorry.
me. Ever managed to figure it out
doing?
at all?
Okay, stop, Mr. Peterson. I mean, before I forget, I'm interested. One of the listeners, Karen, had said that she's a voluntarist and is often considered a libertarian. I'm curious, Karen, if you feel like answering in chat. To me, those two terms are almost synonymous. So I'm wondering what you see as the difference between being a voluntarist and a libertarian. I'd be very interested in your point of view on that. But what I'm going to disagree with here, not disagree with, something I'm going to point out that was kind of weird to me about what Jordan Peterson said when he's very usually careful about the implications of words. He keeps granting that obviously there's such a thing as hate speech, right? I don't agree with him. Then he goes and says it's obvious because it's obvious some things are hateful. I don't think hate speech is the same thing as hateful speech. Hate speech is a term of art used by leftists to connote some kind of, it implies that certain speech is aggression. And that if used in conjunction with a crime or as a crime in and of itself, because it's aggression, can increase the penalties. So I absolutely deny hate speech. Obviously, some speech is hateful, just like some speech is loving. But that's not hate speech. That word is loaded, and he shouldn't use it. So I'm half blind because I'm an old lady. I want to take a look at the comments here. Also, okay, there was a question where somebody asked me about my public ties to anarchism. And it says anarchism and libertarianism are often portrayed at odds. They are often portrayed as at odds by people who are utterly ignorant. Not only ignorant of the philosophy, but ignorant, bringing it back into the political sphere, of the beliefs of the Libertarian Party. Continuing. Let me see here. So, and Kenneth asked a question. Do we not believe that certain types of speech can incite violence or violate someone's rights? You had an or there. No speech violates anyone's rights. That's kind of a simplistic way, but let's go with that. Yes, certain types of speech can incite violence. And that's where things get a bit tricky. If the people were saying something true, and then the listener felt like if those facts are the case, they go out and commit violence, that's on the person committing the violence, not the person speaking truth. Now, if somebody exaggerates, lies, misrepresents a situation, they are fraudulently setting into action a chain of events that can lead to violence, and I do believe they have some kind of culpability, not because of speech, but because of fraud. It's not the speech. You can commit fraud in writing. You could probably commit fraud in pantomime. So it's the fraud that's the issue. That's also the issue in the classic case of you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. Yes, you can, if the theater is actually on fire. So, Jonathan asks, I still have that old comment up here. Let me remove that. A person telling a policeman that was a lie about you in order to get you arrested, would I think that is free speech? It's free speech. You say it. It's not the speech that's the problem. It's the fraud that's the problem. That might be, parsing things out really finely, but I think philosophically that is pertinent. Now, funny, Karen and I might disagree here. I want to add her statement up on the screen. Most people don't want to hide. I don't know anything about the Spike Lee situation, so I can't comment on that. But contrary to most libertarians, I actually do think Trump has some accountability for the Capitol riots, because he's in a unique position of power. If anyone is going to know that things were rigged, wouldn't it be the President of the United States that even knows if Area 51 is real? Knowing the types of knowledge that people would reasonably believe he had when he did not have proof. And for him to go out and confidently say, yes, it was rigged, I believe he engaged in fraud. He doesn't know that. He did not know that. And his position is one of such that people would rely upon those statements. So I know most libertarians disagree with me on that, but that's my view. I did a whole show on that. Now, Chase, doesn't free speech still allow for the concept of slander or libel? I did a whole episode on that. Yes and no. I know that's not very satisfying, but like most complex questions, there isn't a simple answer. If it's fraudulent, yes, meaning fraudulent against something you actually have a right to have. If somebody, though, says something about you that's not true, that causes you to lose reputation, you're not entitled to your reputation. And so the difference between fraud and opinion is fraud would defraud people of something they have the right to. It would be misleading people in a way that's actionable rather than just a mere opinion. It gets somewhat complicated, but that's the simple explanation. And I'm still refining my views on this, to be quite honest, because I did in one broadcast simply say all slander was fraud, and I walked that back. So I would encourage you to take a look through my video archive where I think it's entitled Walking Back My Statements on Slander, I think. So let's continue.
So those dangers are always there. And I also think the highest likelihood often is that societies that do put high value on free speech will lose that because it's so difficult to maintain. So, but with regards to hate speech, for example, let's say that things would be much better if there was less hateful speech. It's like, seems highly probable to me, especially if you look at the more egregious forms of hateful speech. How best to regulate it? Well, my sense is you let those who wish to utter hateful things do so, and let everyone hear them, because that's the best way to ensure that what...
Okay, I'm stopping again because I do want to point out, once again, the utilitarianism. He said, well, it is undeniably true that things would be better off, the most good for the most people, if there were less or no hateful speech. And he said, that seems pretty obvious. I actually don't think it's obvious. I have a theological background, as a lot of you have. As a lot of you know. Maybe a lot of you have it too, but maybe a lot of you know. And something that comes up a lot in theological discussions is, can you know love without knowing hate? Can you know good without knowing evil? Or are they both necessary? Do you understand light if there were no darkness? And I think that's a valid question. And I am not convinced that it's obvious that the world would be better if there were less hateful speech. I think there would be less opportunity for nobility. So I disagree with Mr. Peterson, or is it Dr. Peterson? Someone please let me know if he has a doctorate. I think he does. But let's continue.
Saying will be understood and rejected. Now,
whoa. What was
the
that?
population composed of sovereign individuals is
Hold
wiser than it
on.
is
I am such an idiot. It's because I don't have my glasses on.
You're by one of your most outstanding journalists, or your most popular journalists, to be the case.
Okay.
I think that if you put the evidence in front of people, by and large, they will do the right thing. I think that if you
Oh no, I didn't go back far enough.
The problem with regulating hate speech, it's very simple, because it's so difficult to maintain.
Okay, let's continue. But I'm sorry.
With regards to hate speech, for example, let's say that things would be much better if there was less hateful speech. It's like, seems highly probable to me, especially if you look at the more egregious forms of hateful speech. How best to regulate it? Well, my sense is you let those who wish to utter hateful things do so, and let everyone hear them, because that's the best way to ensure that what they're saying will be understood and rejected. Now, in order to posit that, you have to assume that the population composed of sovereign individuals is wiser than it is foolish. And, you know, that's a hope. You might think about it as an axiom of faith, but I do believe it to be the case. I think that if you put the evidence in front of people, by and large, they will do the right thing. I think that the problem with regulating hate speech, it's very simple. Who defines hate? And the answer to that is, over any reasonable period of time, exactly the people you would least want to have define hate. And so the consequences of the regulation become incalculably worse as a problem than the problem that they were designed to deal with. To think otherwise is to think in a sort of utopian manner. It's like, well, we have a problem, hate speech. Well, we can come up with a solution, and there will be no problems with that solution. It's like, no, that isn't how the world works. You know, when I'm negotiating with my clinical clients, one of the things I always tell them is, often, because they're in difficult circumstances, and often not for psychological reasons, it's like, no, you don't understand. You're screwed both ways. You don't have an option here where you're not going to suffer. That's what it means to be in a bad situation. You're going to pay a price both ways. You can pick your price. Okay, so we're going to have hate speech, or we're going to have the consequences of the arbitrary regulation of hate speech. Well, I know what the consequences are of the arbitrary regulation of hate speech, is that things get a lot worse, because hate's very difficult to define. And that's actually a real problem when you're trying to regulate it, because you have to be able to define it. And we're already at a point where, well, you made someone uncomfortable. Why isn't that?
Okay, I'm going to stop. Interesting. Somebody is letting me know that my stream ended because of a policy violation. They're probably claiming copyright on this, which I will challenge because I am doing commentary and that is allowed. So it's not streaming live on on YouTube. I will break it up into chunks and repost it on YouTube. So, sorry about that. I have to tell you though, I so appreciate that you guys are interacting with each other in comments. So, really sorry again about YouTube pulling that. That's really shitty, isn't it? But again, it happens. But thank you. Let me continue here. It has to be copyright is the policy violation. And I want to agree with Chase that hate speech is just speech. It's just speech. Karen, it was on YouTube as well, and apparently YouTube cut me off midstream for a policy violation. I'm guessing it is because, I don't know. John asked why they're still here. I don't know. We'll find out. I'm going to continue. I can't let my ADHD be distracted with that.
Hate speech. I mean, I was basically asked that by one of your most outstanding journalists, or your most popular journalists. Well, why should you have the right to say something that's offensive? It's like, we can think that through. Let's think that through for a minute. So, I mean, my riposte to her, essentially, although this wasn't directly, it was, that's not a very smart question for a journalist to be asking. Right? Because of all people who should never ask that question would be stand-up comics, right? And journalists. Because that's all they ever do. That's what it means to be a journalist, is to ask a question that's going to be offensive to someone. Who the hell wants to hear about what you've discovered unless it's about something contentious and important? So it was a jaw-dropping question as far as I was concerned. And the fact that it was a jaw-dropping question was part of the reason why that video went viral. Okay, so now let's think about offensiveness as part of hate. Okay, so the first thing we might say is that you really need to think when you have a difficult problem. And a difficult problem is one where there's something at stake. It might be your life, it might be your well-being, but and then we might say, well, there's going to be a diversity of opinions about that particular conundrum if it actually happens to be difficult. And so even to discuss it, because if you discuss it, you're going to discuss option A, it's going to annoy all the people who want option B, or you're going to discuss option B, and that's going to annoy all the people that want option A, and maybe